I'm Anna, the Yarn Randomizer, and this is episode 18. And this is a knitting podcast where I like to go over kind of what I'm working on and kind of what's going on and how I'm picking my yarns. And so the main reason behind the name Yarn Randomizer is because I randomly pick from my stash for projects, and that'll be one of the last things we go over at the end, towards the end, is what the next random picks were and what they're going to become. So welcome if you're just discovering this channel, and welcome back if you've been watching regularly. And I'm looking over there because my notes are right there. And you'll find me on Instagram as original.annasender, and you'll find me on Ravelry as the Yarn Randomizer, and the same, my Gmail address is the Yarn Randomizer as well. And all that information is down below in the information area, as well as everything about anything that I do talk about in here. So I always like to keep things very well documented. And then, let's see, anything else? Oh, yes, the usual. Please like and subscribe if you find this entertaining or enjoy it and stuff. Would love to see you come back. And I think doing those help more folks find it as well. And so trying to get up to that big number of 500 subscribers. Okay. And the thing I realized after the last episode is this last episode, I should have marked that I've been doing this for a year now. And so, so this marks the beginning of, this will be the second year of doing this, and I've been having a lot of fun doing it. So I'm going to continue doing this and everything. And I find it really, my yarn randomizing helps me get motivated to knit, but this is also a place where I get to talk about knitting in a way other knitters can appreciate, because the majority of folks I interact with every day don't have a clue. And I'm sure you have this experience. One of my favorite moments I was telling somebody about recently was how some years ago I had knitted this really nice sweater, and I've worn it on the podcast before at Clark's Falls. And when somebody at work saw it, they thought it looked great, and they say, I'd pay $30 for that sweater. And considering it was 100% wool and hand knit, it's just like people have no idea how much effort goes into that. And so it's just kind of cute. So it's really fun to share with folks who can understand and appreciate the amount of work that goes into this. So we'll get right down to business, and that is what I'm wearing. And this, I believe I had said I would be wearing it this time in 2 weeks in the last episode, and indeed I am. And this is the Wednesday sweater by Petite Knit, and this is a heck of a collar, isn't it? It's in the pattern, you pick it up and you knit it until it's 9.5 inches long, and then you do 2 double knit rows and an Italian bind off on here, and it looks great and everything. Boy, is it long, but it's cozy. One of the things I really like about it is the sweater's really cozy. It's a drop sleeve sweater, so it's a relatively simple construction. You kind of knit the upper back first, pick up the stitches back here. You can see that the shoulder seam is kind of back here. And then you pick up along there and come forward and then join it together, go down further, and then join it in the round and knit it down. And then there's a split hem. And then you pick up these, I'll show that in a moment. And then there's these drop sleeves, because it's a drop shoulder sweater. And one of the interesting thing was before and after blocking, you know, this seam is a little pulled in when you first pick up stitches and knit here. And originally when I cast off, I was a little worried that I cast off too short for the sleeves, but now when it's fully relaxed, it's like partially over my hands, which I'm really happy with that length. I knew this would relax, this seam would relax some, but it definitely gave some additional length to the sleeve when I finished it. I'm trying to think of anything else. It has a split hem. This is very loose and very bulky. There is the split hem down there, and you can see the Italian bind off there. And it kind of did what I wanted it to. That is, I used a favorite sweatshirt that I have to do the sizing on this, and it came out fitting very similar to that. And so it's just a nice cozy kind of curl up on the sofa and knit and stay warm kind of knit. And so yeah, but the collar's like comical. I mean, it's so, when it's folded out, like when it was blocking, and I'll put in a picture of it blocking, it's so long. It looks so long, and it's neat though. Really like it. And this is made out of Cascade Yarns Eco Plus Peruvian tones, and so it's a bulky weight yarn, and this one has this kind of speckled appearance. It's not a marbled yarn where there's two different strands. It's just it's a speckled dye situation. And you know, the only thing I think I would change, you can see there's some looseness to the sleeves, and I know that's desirable, I think, in a lot of sweaters, but even so, in the pattern you knit the all the ribbing in the same size needle that you do the sweater, and I think if I did it again, I would probably use 1 or 2 size lower to just pull it in a little bit more, I think. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out, and it's super cozy. So now the real trick is, Lavon is knit. For those who haven't seen this before, I was knitting this sweater in parallel with a friend, Lavon. She was learning how to knit a sweater, and she's on the sleeves right now. And so the trick will be to get a picture of her in the sweater, and I'll put that in here in a future episode when that happens. But yeah, she's still working on the sleeves. I got to the point where I wanted to finish it, so I kind of rushed through and finished it. But we'll see another one of these soon, I'm sure of that. She's been making good progress, steady progress on it. All right, so that's what I'm wearing, and it's one of my finished objects. So now the big deal is the other. So out of my finished objects, actually only one. No, is it one? Oh, sort of. So it's one finished object, one. We'll get to that. But the big deal finished object is that I finished the Stephen West MKL Geo Gradient shawl. Now finished. My definition of finished is it's off the needles. I got it off the needles. I still have some weaving in to do, and I have to block it. But otherwise, the knitting part is done. So you can see the 4 sections. I did that first section is this series of squares, and then picked up with the altered pattern that you had where there were these concentric squares. But I did these 4 big squares in the middle. It was just what I decided to do. And then there's the second section is this eyelet, alternating eyelet section. Then there's this these slip stitch triangles. And then finally there's this dip stitch section. Now you can see that's curling up a bit. I think when it gets soaked and when it gets kind of pulled out, I intend to do some manipulating when I go to block this out. But what I decided to do is a little different than what he had. That was color, was it, I think, whoops, I'll keep the computer awake there. Wake up. All right, color 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I think in the pattern, you kind of, at that point, you went to casting it off. I put on at least 2 extra, oh, actually, yeah, I think it would have been 1, 2, 3, 1, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of dip stitches. The last one would have been in the first color. And, but I added 2 extra rows, and what I did was I did into the darkest color and then back out to the lightest color again to have that kind of pattern for the dip stitches. And then did the I-cord bind off yesterday. I finished that last row and did all of the I-cord bind off yesterday because I really wanted this off the needles, and in part because I want to get a chance to block it out and try it out, but also because I want to earn some yarn budget. So again, if you haven't been here before or you might have missed something, my thing I'm doing this year is I earn yarn purchasing by using up yardage, and I can use up yardage, and then when I tally up how much yardage I've used, I can purchase, I get half of that as yarn budget for purchasing. So So that's very motivated to finish this, particularly before I go to Knitting in the Hills in Austin, which is a retreat I'll be going to in a couple of weeks. So yeah, so I think overall pretty pleased. It'll be really interesting to see how it blocks out, and I'll have that to well, maybe, well, we'll see. Maybe next time. Next time, one of the things that's going to happen is I'm going to be recording this on the road, probably while I'm at the knitting retreat. So if I block this, I've finished. Oh yeah, and let me at least show you. I did do weave and steven on a lot of my ends, but on places where it was near the boundary, I kind of wanted to do something different. So I've got a decent amount of ends to weave in, but not a ton, not too awful. But whether I get this blocked and bring it with me to Austin, now it's going to be really pretty warm, I think, in Austin when I go down there. I don't know. So it may be in 4 weeks I might have this to show off and everything. One of the things I do want to note, so I knit this out of, it was Lankava, let's see, I have it right here, Sula from Finish Knits, and it's a superwash fingering, but it's a little different. So if you can see how those strands are kind of holding on to each other a little bit, it's stickier than your standard merino superwash. And so I think between that and the fact that slip stitch fabrics like this and these dip stitches produce a much denser fabric, this almost has more like a throw feel to it versus a shawl. But part of that will be, we'll see how it comes out after blocking and see how it turns out and everything. So I'm looking forward to blocking it, but I definitely got some weaving in to do to get there. But I'm looking forward to getting a chance to wear it once that's done. So yeah, that was my big project to get done. That earned me around 1,500 yards of yarn. Oh, and the other thing is I am going to include a short fringe, where I cut 6-inch pieces and then put them on here so that they are less than 3 inches long here at the edges. And I'm going to combine each 4 of the colors together in each single fringe. And for those who did the pattern, there was an initial start that got undone because of some design issues. And you can go look that up and watch Stephen West's commentary on, his whole video on that and everything. But so I had a center made and finished, which I tore out and restarted. And so this is yarn that's left over from that original centerpiece. And in the other room, in the main room in the house, I have a steamer, and I've been steaming these two. These are ones that still need to be steamed, but steaming them to get the kinkiness out of them so that I can use them for the fringe. I want to use these leftovers for the fringe instead of cutting anything out of the remaining yarn in the skein. And so those will be on there for next time, for when I block it as well. So yeah, so it turned out it was definitely a lot. I feel like particularly this last part, these dip stitches were a lot of work. I don't know if I'd want to do those again or not. Maybe not on something so big. Those are really long rows, over 500 stitches. And so you're doing over 100 dip stitches along those rows, and that got to be a bit of a slog. All right, so that's one finished object. Now, I have my board back here that I keep my projects in process on. I was actually looking at IKEA the other day, and what I didn't realize is besides hooks, they also have shelves and things to put on these boards. So I think I'm going to be going to IKEA and getting maybe another pegboard and some other types of items to have there to set things on. So we'll see. But I really like this pegboard. It's been really useful. So now I can bring this down. Last time, one of my Yarn Randomizer picks was a Delicious Yarns Swirl fingering. And we're going to hear some plastic here. just a minute. I had really tucked this project. I put it into hibernation basically, because I work on this project as yarn comes up to, oh, and I pulled the needle out of the stitches, so I'll set this aside. Let's see. Oops, let's get those back in there. There we go. Not bad. All right. So this is a 10 stitch blanket pattern, and I wanted to, hold on, I will hold that back up in just a moment. I always like I want pattern makers to always get their credit. Oh, and I have to look at hibernating there. And Frankie Brown. Okay, so this is the 10 stitch blanket by Frankie Brown, and I actually have some alterations I'm doing based on one person's project. I have that linked in my project, so you get these pronounced stitches at the edges as you're knitting this together. Well, since last time, this was yarn pick, was it number 7 for this year, this gray, the swirl fingering in Earl Gray. And I knit the 18 yards I had left of that into the blanket. I also knit this about 9 yards of the, this was Hypnotic Yarns Vintage Ornaments that I knit in here. I liked it so much. Normally if I have less than 10 yards, I don't, it's just scrap yarn. It just kind of, I have a jar full of scrap yarn up there for cast-ons and things like that, but I decided I liked it so much I wanted to put it into the blanket, and so I included that as well. So that's a little further, and so this just gets little bits of yarn here and there as they come up, randomly picked out of my stash. And so that's another sort of finished object that is put away for the time being until another one comes up. Now set that aside. So those were the finished objects, and then the works in progress. So I have been keeping up on my, oh, it's hanging back here, on my slip Stravaganza blanket. And so I have a spreadsheet, as I've mentioned in previous episodes. I have a spreadsheet where I calculated the total number of stitches in this entire humongous blanket. It's an 86.5 inch in diameter blanket in DK. And so I worked up a daily goal. So I have a daily goal that I knit, and I have a spreadsheet where I'm doing all that tracking. You'll find I make lots of spreadsheets. And I've been keeping up, and it's just turning out really neat. So this time, I think last time I wasn't quite finished with the section 2, sort of like the painting bricks type of pattern, but with kind of start small and then they get larger as you get further out. Now this one is this really neat, I guess it would be called a mosaic type pattern. You're slipping the stitches, but you're purling them on the second row of the contrast color so that they really pop out in a kind of 3D kind of effect between the slip stitches in the pattern. So this one's about halfway through, so there's another 4 rows of the contrast color to do there before it goes to bubble stitch in the blanket. But you can see that this thing keeps getting bigger. Let's see if I can stretch that out a little bit. It's starting to be restricted again by the needle. But yeah, you can see that. So I'm really happy with how that's turning out. And so this is Lancava again, their DK from Finished Knits. Let's see, did I put that name of that yarn here? M-A-I-N-I-O, Manio. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but yeah, so, and it's been working up really nicely. Again, one of the things I like about this Lancava yarn is it has, somebody going by, it has just that little bit of stickiness to it. So for these kind of color work sections, I think it works out really well. And so that continues. I think by the time I go to the knitting retreat, I'll be done with this, towards the end of it, I'll be done with this third section here, and I'll be getting ready to start the bubble pattern. And the bubble pattern goes for a while. I think they repeat the 3 colors. They don't use the main color in there, they just use these 3 colors, which are, I think this might be called Snow. It's their white color, Cotton Candy, and Cherry will be alternated in bubble stitch rows. And so it will continue to grow. At the time at which the bubbles, these right now it's at about 490 stitches per row. When the bubble stitches go on, it's going to be over 700. And eventually I think it gets close to 1,500 stitches per row. Won't that be fun? But it continues. I'm keeping this in progress. So again, I get really excited at the idea of the end of the year, I will have this big spread to put on the guest bed in the guest bedroom. And so I'm looking forward to that. How I'm going to manage this will be really interesting when it gets to be summertime. Seeing how big it gets and everything. But I've really been enjoying knitting. It's a fun, I've really found it an enjoyable pattern to knit. And breaking it down into these bite-sized daily pieces makes it feel really manageable. So I'm really psyched. Easy to get done every day. And so I know I'll have something really cool at the end of the year. Now, let's see. So that's, oh, it's so, next whip. So there's right now, there's a couple of projects in here, a shawl and a shawl and a scarf in here kind of hovering. They kind of got neglected because I really wanted to finish the Stephen West knit along pattern. But I did pick up and start knitting on my, since I finished this sweater, I picked up and started knitting on my Ravello sweater again. And so let's see how well you can see this. Spread this out. This is a fingering weight sweater knit on, make sure, size 6. So this is somewhat kind of a loosely knit, but you can start to see the stripes there, these purple, these just with the purple specks in there, and kind of, was it the, I guess that's kind of a fluorescent green specks in there. And so you can see that coming along in the stripes. Now I've got this whole thing charted out. In the standard Ravello pattern, you start introducing these stripes partway down the yoke, the raglan yoke, and then you continue it down into the body for a little bit and then switch to a different color for the rest of the body. And then partway down the sleeve, you go back to the main color at top for the rest of the sleeves. What I did was I changed it so that I had 3 yarns that I was using, and I wanted to use each of them equally in the sweater. So I laid out the sweater in a spreadsheet. That should be one of my quotes probably. I made a spreadsheet. And I detailed out exactly how many rows would we use what colors, so that when I tallied everything up as far as how much of each color was used, it was almost very close to being equal, to about 1/3 of the sweater using each color. And so we'll see how that works out as I knit this up. But yeah, so I'm making the 5th size of this. And you know, I notice other people talk about this. I don't always talk about the needles that I'm using. I basically use 2 types of needles. I use ChowGoo's. I use their knit red needles for the most part, and not the lace tips, but the knit red. I prefer non-lace tips, and I know I'm an exception, and most people I think prefer lace tips in general for knitting. And then these are my tried and true Addi clicks. And I have to say, I absolutely love these Addi clicks. When I'm doing just full-blown regular circular knitting, where I don't have to do magic loop and everything, there's nothing like using these Addi clicks, because the yarn slides over these needles like nobody's business. I can just kind of really chug along on that. And so I've been really enjoying this since it's plain. Basically, I'm just knitting stockinette in the round. That's a wild color. So to get a look at actually, there it is right there. So the 3 skeins, the 3 colors I'm using are two of them are from Mandy's Making. She's a seller on Etsy. And she has these kind of yarn pairings that she sells, usually called share a pair, because the idea is you get 2 different colors in 2 sets of 50-gram skeins, and the idea is you share a pair of the colors with a friend and you both knit the same thing. Well, I've done that, but in this case I'm using all the yarn for myself out of this share a pair. And this share a pair was Silly Monsters, and so it had this very bright fluorescent green and this speckled kind of blotched other color that has the green, and it has this purple in here. And then for the bottom, for the body of the Ravello, I have this beautiful purple to use, which will be the body. This is Lorna's Laces shepherd sock yarn in, I can't remember the name of the colorway, Grapevine. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, so I'm really happy with how those are coming together. And I want to get some serious progress in on this sweater. This is the next sweater I'm targeting finishing so that I can start on some sweaters for this year, because this was a randomizer pick. It was number 24 from last year. And I cast it on late in the year because I didn't, one of my rules, I have lots of rules around knitting, which may seem kind of restrictive, but I have a lot of fun with it. As I pick random projects, if a randomizer pick doesn't get started before the end of the year, it goes back into the big pool of yarn over there, and I have to wait to see it randomly get picked again some other time. I liked this combination of yarns so well, I just didn't want to let go of it, so I did cast it on right at the end of the year. So that's why it's a lingering project from last year. So that's coming. And so I'm definitely not saying I'm going to be wearing this for next time, but we'll see how much progress I can make, because I'm really motivated to start that Anna tee that uses the Yarn Randomizer pick I talked about last episode, that has some beautiful, 5 beautiful colors in that fingering weight yarn from, I think, 3 Irish Girls that looks so great, and I can't wait to use it. So yeah, so I think, so that's all the whips. Now, acquisitions. Now, I did not buy like yarn on its own, but I've been thinking about, and this might seem early, it's what, February, and I'm thinking about Christmas. And so everybody's seen these emotional support chickens, I think, around, and I think the yarn shop is that the Knitting Tree in LA. And so just, they're adorable. And so I had this idea. So what I did was I texted to my stepson. I said, check this out. This is the latest hot thing knitting, as these emotional support chickens. And so his response was very positive. He says, oh, that's really cool. He really liked it. And this is a guy in his 30s, just so you know. But so he said he really liked it. And so I didn't say anything back to that. And I thought, okay, that's what's happening for Christmas for him and for his wife, and probably for his sister as well, I think. But so what I did was I picked up 2 kits from, it's again the Knitting Tree. I'll link that shop below. So I picked up 2 of these kits. They're just so cute. And so this one is, they have different colorways. This is Chicky Minaj. And you can kind of see the colors, and there's some purples and grays in there. So that'll be one. And I could probably stick in photos of them. I'll see if I get persistent enough, I'll put in photos of those. And the other one is this one, and this is Meg Shell Obama. And it's kind of some blues and grays in there. And so, again, isn't that cute? And so I've actually got plenty of fiber fill to use to stuff it and everything. And I'm also looking at putting together a couple of yarns from my stash for the one. So these 2 will be for my stepson and his wife. And then I've got another one that I'll make using some yarn from my stash. I found a yarn in my stash I think that will be perfect for making one of these. And I'll use that one for my stepdaughter. And so that's the only acquisition I've had. So this might seem like fudging things a bit, but I don't consider this kind of an addition to my stash. These aren't folded into my stash. They're strictly a project that I'll definitely do and get done for them this year. Similar to how I do the annual shawl from Jimmy Bean's Wool and don't, as that yarn comes in and I work it, it just comes in and goes right out, you know, in the project. It's not one that's going in and going like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. These are very dedicated and for a specific purpose. And so I don't get penalized for that. But yeah, so those were cool to get. So I'm looking forward to knitting those. I'll knit them sometime over the next, before Christmas and well before Christmas. I don't like to be rushed. All right, and so that's the emotional support chicken. That was the only acquisitions I had. And now, so stash management, I think I mentioned that I'm up to $1,500. $1,500, that would be nice for yarn. No, up to 1,500 yards. And so if I could spend $1,500, that would be totally nuts. But yeah, 1,500 yards of yarn budget. And so I'm trying to hold on to that. I'm trying to actually build up maybe a little bit more before I get to the retreat and to look for a yarn, see if there's something I like. And typically I've been trying to buy in sweater quantities anymore, but we'll see. I'll take a look at what I find down there. I definitely want to stop by Gage, the yarn shop in Austin, because I finished, I think it was 2 episodes ago, I wore the sweater that I finished that was made out of yarn I picked up at their shop. So I wanted her to see how that turned out. And so I'll probably make a point of stopping by there while I'm in Austin as well. So outside of that, we're down to the random picks for next time. And I've been toying with the idea of doing a video of my husband pulling a chip out of the bucket, which might be a silly thing to do, but maybe that would make a fun short to do, but we'll see. But I've mentioned it to him. He seems open to it, so we'll see. Okay, so now I need a drum roll or some kind of dramatic music for doing the yarn picks. So if you watch my shorts, these I'm going to be covering yarn picks 9 and 10. And so yarn pick number 9 ended up being this Knit Picks Wool of the Andes, and it's in this colorway. Oh, excuse me. Ooh, I think it's some mohair or something floating around in the air. Lady slipper. Yes, lady slipper. So this is the worsted weight of this yarn. Now, I picked up this and another color to go with some yarn I had from my mom's stash. So, trying to see, is it up here? No, I had put it down here somewhere. Maybe not. I was pretty sure I know I have all of my mother's yarns here. And I was just trying to, oh, I think it's right here. Okay, so this is it. So I started working on a gauge swatch. So I had the lady slipper colorway, and I have started working on a gauge swatch in another color called Sweet Lavender. A lot of purples in here. And so I'm doing an in the round swatch. See how this comes out. And you'll notice that my in the round swatch, and there goes my ball of yarn, my in the round swatch doesn't have strands across the back, but you'll see that it has little strands hanging off to one side. And that's using a technique. I will say use the term Elizabeth Zimmerman uses, and I invented it. I kind of figured it out one day, said, hey, I can do this and not have the strands. And then I find later that there's a couple people who, I looked on YouTube, couldn't find anybody who had it. So I made a video, which I will link below, of how to do this. But I've heard other folks sharing this technique as well. But it's nice because then you don't have the restrictions of the strands at the back if you didn't make them long enough. And you don't have to cut any strands to do the blocking and everything. So I'm working on a gauge swatch right now in plans of making a sweater. Now, of course, 2 or even 4 balls of this yarn would not be sufficient, but as it turns out, I'm going to hold up this bag. I don't know how well you can see that, But basically in this bag there are a lot of purples and greens and a couple of black yarns. So there's one of the greens. Here's the darkest green, and it's a very heathered green, and it's some of these are like a heathered purple and stuff. And this is all yarn that came from my mother's stash. And it's kind of cool that this pick, and it was the reason I bought these yarns in the first place, was to augment what I got out of my mom's stash. And so the idea is to make a sweater. Now, originally I was thinking about Joji Locatelli has a sweater pattern called the Simple Summer Striped Sweater. Wait a minute, it's right there. Super Simple Summer Sweater. There we go. And it's striped. And I've seen a lot of people make it, and it's a really nice pattern and everything. But for some reason, I was thinking I wanted to do something a little different with the pattern, with the yarn. I still wanted to use a pattern where I could use multiple colors. And so what I found, and I believe, oh yes, there it is. So what I found, and I'll put up a picture right there, or over there, one place or another, is I found the pattern Harvey Wallbanger by Thea Coleman. And so I liked it because it has stripes, but instead of being straight, because it's a lace knit pattern, they kind of, the stripes have this crinkle kind of effect to them because of how the pattern that they're knit in. Now, her pattern calls for just 2 colors, but what I figured was when I looked at the yarns and I separated out the greens and the purples and stuff, I had enough of the purples and the greens to represent the 2 colors in the sweater. And so what I'll do is I'll make a plan to kind of use different colors at different times in the sweater. And so I'll be making a spreadsheet to plan that all out. And I have some black, and maybe I'll use that for the for some of the ribbing. We'll see and stuff, but I will be coming up with a plan on how to use this yarn in that sweater pattern. So I'm psyched about that. That'll be fun, and it's worsted weight, so it should be a reasonably fast knit, which will be nice. So that was Yarn Randomizer pick number 9. Basically, I'm going to be trying to use almost all the Wool of the Andes worsted I have in my stash in a single sweater. So we'll see how that works out. Now, the next one, another drum roll, is Bare Naked Wool's Hempshaw 2.0. Now, I think I got this, might have been in July. I would have to look back at it. But I subscribe to Bare Naked Wool's Barn Box. And that's where every other month they send you a new yarn that they're going to have available, because they do lots of yarns with, you know, different farms and that kind of stuff, kind of different wools. Again, the whole kind of theme behind Bare Naked Wools are these untreated, you know, very simple kind of simply made yarns, and they're really nice. I really like working with them, and this Hempshaw is really super nice. So I've got 3 skeins of this. Now these skeins are 4-ounce skeins, so they're 115 grams, not just 100 grams. And this is I believe it's a fingering, yes, a fingering weight yarn. And so it's a 450 yards per skein. So with 3 of these, I have what, 950 yards. Was it 3? Oh, the mathematician is not doing her arithmetic quite right. So 3 times there's 12, 1350 yards of yarn. And I definitely want to make a sweater out of this. And the feel of this, because it's merino, 40% merino wool, but the rest of it is 30% hemp and 30% silk. This just feels like it'll be a really neat garment. And that's what I want to make. So I found a sweater, and this one's the Ilha by Orlane Suchi. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but I'll put a picture up there. And so I think this will look great in that pattern. And so, goodness, have I got a lot of sweaters lined up to be knit. And so I've got to get a move on. So I definitely want to finish my current sweater that's on the needles and get started on my Amity. And then once I get past those two, get to these two as well. So it looks like it's going to be a big year for sweaters here for the random picks that are coming up. So that's it. As I mentioned before, in 2 weeks I will be at Knitting in the Hills retreat, and so I might be recording in my room there and putting an episode together at that location. And so we'll see. I'll be also visiting my sons. My 3 sons live in Austin, Texas, and so this is part of a combined visit them for a week and then go to the yarn retreat, which should be fun. But otherwise, just been enjoying getting these things off the needles. Feel like I've been getting in a sequence of episodes here. I've finished, in the past 3 episodes, I finished 3 sweaters and I finished the big shawl. So I've been making great progress. I hope you're making great progress too on your knitting and finding a lot of fun stuff to knit. Would love to see folks if you want to link your projects or things like that, or just friend me on Ravelry so I can see what you're doing and that kind of thing, and comment below on anything that you happen to be working on and that kind of thing. But otherwise, I hope you're enjoying your knits, and I'll see you next time.